Hi, my name is JD Estrada, also known as John Zender. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my work and the process in which I arrived to this point in my career. Basically, to make a long story short, my current work, this is the first, actually today is January 1st, 2025. And I want to do these videos to help my audience or help people who follow me understand my current work, because it could be a little bit complicated. I began doing my art in the 1980s as a street artist, graffiti artist, and that's kind of where my name Zender and you could say the most popular aspect of my career began. I did a lot of murals too, so I'm also a muralist. And there was a point in time, maybe in the late 1990s, that I was very prolific in mural painting, and I think a lot of people thought that was going to be my, art style as far as canvas. And I always felt that murals and my personal work were always separate. Murals were always the work of the people, art for the people. I felt like I was being more like a commissioned to do what they wanted on the community, while my personal work is a lot more about what I'm contemplating and thinking about. I also done a series of Chicano art that I experienced the idea of exploring and understanding a little bit about other genres. And once I felt that I've maximized, or I felt like I developed enough, I can then move on to something else. The process, or the next phase after Chicano art, I would say, was spiritual abstraction. I did that for 10 years, and I think the spiritual abstractions were the key point that allowed me to free myself from traditional subject matter, or actually from personal narrative. I think especially even some of the work that I did while I was incarcerated allowed me to self-analyze myself and explore my own story and my own humanity about who I am, growing up in East Los Angeles and South Central Los Angeles in the 1970s. So I didn't feel that the spiritual abstraction needed that part of my story. I felt I painted it enough during the Chicano and prison series that I can almost say I've done self-analyzing myself, and now I'm moving into a more social content, meaning I'm now thinking about how me as a human being interact with a society or a humanity as a whole. So spiritual abstraction was the key point, because that also introduced me to Latin American art. Artists like Wilfredo Lam, with this Cuban sort of almost Cubist style. The work of Fernando de Cislo, with his almost, you can say, architectural pre-Columbian abstractions mixed with, values of shades of color moving forward and backwards. I loved his color scheme, very warm, with a hint of a punch of purple or a punch of blue. I love that. Loved his work. And also the greatest influence probably was Roberto Sebastian Mata, who, when I first saw the work, I thought it was graffiti art because of the way he misted the colors, and I thought he was using spray paint. But as I went to several of his exhibitions and I studied more about his work, I found out that he thinned out his oils to a point where he was actually able to rub some of it off, allowing the mist and the layering effect to be translucent, symbolizing gases and atmospheric, cosmic, morphological subject matter, and that fascinated me. So in the spiritual abstraction, I began with almost a very mata-like style where I was using, but in my case, I was using the aerosol as the mist to lay the layered atmospheric spiritual essence that I wanted to convey. On the spiritual abstractions, the abstractions had a lot of symbolism derivative or taken from biblical scriptures, subjects like the Holy of Holies, where my idea that God, came to us as a man in the form of Jesus, and his supernatural experience was sort of like him teaching us about spirituality from a point that allowed us to understand each other and how we should interact with each other. And so a lot of my work was about hope, love, compassion, trials, tribulations, the things that every single one of us experience. Obviously, we all have a different way of describing those experiences. A lot of us have a different way of interpreting the experience, and we all have our own way of interacting or sharing that experience with one another. So by the time I was now moved away from the spiritual abstraction and added a figure or a portrait, that was probably in 2010, 2011, with a series called Urban Chicano. And I chose the Urban Chicano because I wanted to combine the spiritual abstraction with my own people, my own cultural people, the Chicano, because I felt like everybody has a personal struggle. But from my own experience, I know that I interacted with some Chicanos who had very traumatic experiences, and my way to explain their story was in a physical body with black and white portraits, with abstractions and tattoos. I felt like the tattoos were the storytelling. A lot of the people from prison will describe their own story through a tattoo symbolism, and I used that, and I thought it was good for a while until I felt that it was a little bit too limiting. It was really pinpointing too much the individual and not expanding farther than that actual individual that I was portraying. So it wasn't until 2017, 2018 that I began to explore the idea of not using the entire body but just the heads. I am absolutely now, since 2018, completely fascinated with the head, the face. And the main reason why is because I feel that in biology or in science, the head or the brain is the motherboard of who we are. There is a vagus nerve that goes to your brain all the way to your body that literally controls every organ, or it monitors every organ. There is a neurological system. There is a the chakras, the energy, the blood flow. So the brain is what monitors all this, and plus it's also some would say, even some scientists would say, is where our consciousness is. And I believe the consciousness is the eternal part of us. It is the part of us where our soul is and where our spirit is. It's in our consciousness. The Bible and a lot of spirituality uses the heart, and I know a lot of Chicanos love to use the heart as the symbol of love, or the symbol of many of the things that come from the emotional component. But I don't use the heart. I use, again, the head, the mind, the brain as the motherboard. So to me, the brain is the heart. it's where even your emotions come out from your certain parts of your brain, if you study neuroscience. So when I began to explore the head or the mind, I really wanted to include a scientific and a neurological component to it. So in my work, the face sometimes looks like if there is no skin, it might look like very pale, like bone, cartilage, blood vessel, muscle tissue. Sometimes I do that intentionally. Sometimes I'll actually do a specific person, older man, younger man, a child. And those are when I'm trying to portray an emotion or a gesture or an actual symbol. I leave a portion of the skull where we have like this indentation on the side of our head where our cranium is being developed. I had a very tragic accident at probably 8 years old where I fell off a building and I have a scar that literally circulates around this portion of my head, and the skull was removed, and I was supposed to get platinum put back on. And there was a time when I was a child where I wore a helmet. I can actually feel there was nothing, no barriers between the brain and the outside world except for a layer of skin, and I could feel the heartbeat or the pulse of my brain, and it would pulse like a heart. And that would always fascinate me, and I would have dreams and nightmares that's where I would, So I kept that as a personal symbol of what was removed from me. I remove from my own portraits and my own skulls. But what I do is I allow that to be the gateway to creativity, or the gateway to spirituality. From that portion, I'll do a color vibe, a color field, or a color band that is symbolic for we're receiving ideas or receiving spiritual thoughts. And I love to talk about the senses, the smell, the sight, the speech, the hearing. I believe we are very we experience the world through the senses, and some of them have our senses a little more heightened than the others, but I believe that all the senses work together to give us a personal interpretation of the world we live in. But at the same time, even though we rely on our senses, our brain or our mind concept or our preconceived idea, or what I call the subconscious mind, is the filtration system, you may say, that allows us, as human beings, allows us to understand or make sense of what reality is. Without that filtration, you can almost say it would have been, all of us would have been sort of robotic AI, and we interpret reality by association. Scientists say that in the first 7 years of our child raising are the most crucial, because that's where we sort of begin to solidify our concept. If we have a good childhood or a tragic childhood or a traumatic childhood, we begin to make associations of concepts with emotions. And sometimes that's where when we have a negative mindset or a positive mindset, it was developed from early on. So I deal with all that in my work. I do a lot of personal symbolic imagery, like molecular, the auras. There's always, on the new work, there's always this kind of like a shield in front of the heads that represents our aura. And the aura, for me, is a vibrational energy that either we project or we absorb. The way I feel, it's like something we go into someone's room and we can pick up the vibration of the mood, or if people turn around and stare at you, you can already like feel the energy of that vibration. And I like to show that in the work. So that's I want to do a lot more series, and the next series I do on these will be to specifically analyze each individual painting, one painting at a time. So my name's JD Estrada. You can find me at juandanielestrada.com or jdestradaart.com, or if you want to see more of my commercial side or interactive things that I do more for the community, my radio, I'm also a radio host. You can find that at jdestudios.com. Hope you enjoyed this video and continue watching more of these series.